Degrading and dangerous, the conditions some patients suffer in NHS hospitals. An A&E consultant tells ITV News there's no dignity left for those needing treatment.
Some of them have been incontinent on trolleys because there just wasn't the nursing staff or the medical staff to get to them in time.
It comes as the number of elderly patients waiting more than 12 hours on trolleys doubles. Also tonight, Corbyn's conundrum, managing immigration and capping pay for top earners. The 7-year-old killed in York, a teenage girl, is under arrest. And just free running, now it's a sport. The UK becomes the first country to officially recognise parkour.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. A senior doctor has told ITV News that he's seen A&E patients enduring degrading and dangerous conditions, including waiting on trolleys for hours at an NHS hospital in England. The consultant at a busy hospital in one of the country's biggest cities has spoken out on the day it's revealed that the number of patients waiting more than 12 hours on trolleys for treatment has doubled. Our health editor Rachel Younger has this special report.
The row surrounding our emergency departments isn't going away. Patients don't know whether to expect crisis conditions or a service that's largely coping, in most hospitals at least. But on the front line, the pressure's so relentless, one senior consultant has chosen to speak out.
We have patients pretty much anywhere that you can have a patient in our emergency department.
We've disguised his voice because he fears for his job, but his words speak for themselves.
We've got patients with severe illnesses on chairs receiving drips, antibiotics, medications, patients with cardiac problems who are on chairs because there's no trolley for them to go onto, unable to monitor them.
It's a disturbing picture, backed up by data just released by NHS England. It shows the number of patients over 70 left waiting on trolleys for over 12 hours more than doubled from 34,000 3 years ago to 88,000. In total, over 185,000 patients of all ages were left waiting on a trolley for at least 12 hours. Nearly 1 in 3 of them were over 80, and the experience can be desperate.
Because we're overwhelmed in terms of our staffing numbers, some of them have been incontinent on trolleys because there just wasn't the nursing staff or the medical staff to get to them in time. And they've done so in full view of their relatives, strangers. You just feel awful.
The sound is at the end of the 4-hour waiting times.
Today, the Health Secretary avoided questions about whether the 4-hour waiting time should only apply to urgent cases, after suggesting yesterday that a third of A&E patients didn't need to be there.
I think it's actually farcical coming out with that. Our problem is not the patients who are coming in through to the urgent care centre or with the less urgent conditions. It's completely to do with the lack of capacity for patients that we currently have. For
those stuck, it's degrading at best. In the worst instances, it's downright dangerous. Rachel Younger, ITV News.
Well, meanwhile, it has emerged that a hospital under investigation for the deaths of 2 patients on trolleys was warned about the risks just 10 days before. Staff at Worcestershire Royal's A&E department were told patients are waiting too long in corridors, putting them at risk of harm. Well, Ben Chapman is there now. Ben.
Well, a week on from those 2 deaths, we're told patients are still being cared for on trolleys in corridors at the A&E here. What's more, it's been that way every day since Christmas Eve. And a spokesman admitted today it's become a regular occurrence when things get busy at this hospital. Philip Richards returned from the Worcestershire Royal last Friday after suffering a mild stroke. But he had to wait in a busy and drafty corridor on a trolley for 6 hours to get that diagnosis.
Large numbers of people walking that corridor are walking past you all the time, within inches of you, and you're in agony, and you've got no dignity at all. You could hire a shed and put people in there and put curtains around them. That would be better than what they're suffering in there.
The couple say it's not the first time it's happened to them here, where at New Year 2 patients died after long waits in corridors. Now it's emerged there was a crisis summit just 10 days before, following concerns about care. In a leaked memo, staff were told, despite our best efforts, patients are waiting too long in corridors, putting them at risk of harm, and we know this is a real concern to our staff.
Worcestershire is probably the hospital which we're most worried about of all, because what happened there was very serious.
The Health Secretary has conceded it needs more capacity, but in the meantime, this patient's representative is concerned the hospital has even installed patient buzzers in corridors. They're being used that often.
I've seen the staff try their best. I've seen the people on beds and not being dignity. All these things, and water and being fed, all these are an important part of nursing. You can't do it in the corridor properly. You need proper wards and proper staffing.
The hospital trust says it tries to avoid using corridors, but that doing so at busy times allows it to see more patients who are treated by the same doctors and nurses. An investigation will reveal whether it played a part in last week's deaths. Ben Chapman, ITV News, Worcester.
Okay, let's go straight back to Rachel Younger. This is all really incredibly worrying, obviously, isn't it? But it's not just patients on trolleys who are suffering, is it?
No. I mean, I think it's important to say that not every hospital is as overstretched as the hospitals we've focused on today, although without doubt they are all under relentless pressure. But I think you can expect wherever you are in the country to be affected by the consequences of this. And as you say, not just in A&E. Our hospitals in England, as of last week, were running at an occupancy rate of over 91%. It should be closer to 85%. There are obvious concerns there about overcrowding and understaffing. It means some intensive care units aren't able to keep a bed free for emergency cases. And it also looks that the elective waiting list is growing at such a rate it could hit 4 million this year.
All right, Rachel Younger, thank you. Now, Jeremy Corbyn was meant to reboot his troubled leadership of the Labour Party today with a set-piece speech on immigration. But any hopes for clarity were quickly dashed when he appeared to contradict himself in interviews and then suddenly proposed and then equally suddenly dropped a plan for a maximum wage. Our political correspondent Carl Dinnan reports from Peterborough.
Today was supposed to be a bit of a New Year relaunch for the Labour leader, with a firmer line on immigration to be announced in Brexit-supporting Peterborough. Before the speech, we were told Jeremy Corbyn would say Labour is not wedded to free movement for EU citizens in principle. But what he actually said was,
"We're not wedded to free movement to the EU as a point of principle, but I don't want to be misinterpreted, nor do we rule it out. Changes to the way migration rules operate from the EU will obviously be part of the negotiations. We support fair rules and management of migration as part of a deal."
It was all a lot more vague than expected and disappointed Labour MPs who've been calling for immigration control.
I think it's a pity that we moved in the space of, 18 hours or something from what I think was quite a clear line to something which was less clear.
The confusion about immigration was then overtaken by an unexpected Corbyn proposal to cap the amount anyone could earn. He later said he'd meant high earners should only earn a ratio of what low earners get and hadn't meant a numerical cap.
I think a number would be difficult because it wouldn't actually have any great effect on the pay levels within the company, whereas the ratio system would. And so I tend to favour the ratio system. As I say, it's an idea. I've discussed it with members of our team. We've put it out there for discussion and debate, and we look forward to hearing people's views on it.
And the views of Labour supporters we found in a Portuguese cafe in town were mixed.
I think it's an excellent idea, and sometimes I think we've got to try new innovative ideas to see if they actually work.
In reality, it probably isn't practical.
One former Labour advisor went further, calling the idea idiotic. But Jeremy Corbyn has grabbed people's attention today and signalled what kind of leader he is. Radical, left-wing and slightly shambolic. Carl Dinnan, ITV News, Peterborough.
Detectives investigating the death of a 7-year-old girl in York are tonight questioning a 15-year-old girl. And Damon Green is at the scene now. So, Damon, what are police saying about this incident?
Well, police have been very careful about what they have said over the last 24 hours. After all, this is the apparently violent death of a 7-year-old girl and a 15-year-old girl being held in custody. But in the last half hour, they have said that that little girl can be named tonight as 7-year-old Katie Ruff. Her family have released an image of her to be used, and she is, as you can see, a heartbreakingly pretty little girl. In a brief statement, the police say Katie's family are devastated by this tragic event and have asked for their privacy to be respected at this extremely distressing time. Katie was found in the passageway between this cul-de-sac and the playing field just behind, just after 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Paramedics couldn't do anything for her. Police have reissued an appeal for witnesses, anyone who may have seen anything, to come forward and to get in touch.
Damon Green in York, thank you. A children's author was drugged repeatedly before being suffocated and murdered by her partner in a plot to gain access to her fortune, a court heard today. Helen Bailey disappeared in April, and prosecutors say her fiancé, Ian Stewart, misled police before her body was found at their Hertfordshire home in July. Neil Connery was there as Stewart's trial began today.
Helen Bailey was a successful children's author whose work over the years had made her worth almost £4 million. Her partner, Ian Stewart, who she was due to marry, reported her missing from their Hertfordshire home last April. Today, he went on trial for her murder. Helen's body was discovered last July in a cesspit in the grounds of the home in Royston where they lived. Today, a court heard the prosecution outline its case against Ian Stewart. Stuart Trimmer QC told jurors, by early afternoon on April 11th, the only other person in that house, Ian Stewart, killed her, probably by suffocation, while she was sedated by the drugs he had administered for some time. The jury heard Ian Stewart joined in searches and appeals to find his partner, despite knowing her body was in the cesspit. Helen Bailey's dachshund Boris was also discovered alongside her body. The prosecutor said it was killed to support Ian Stewart's claim Helen had left their home with her dog, who she was devoted to. The prosecution told the court that this was a long-planned, deliberate killing, a cynically executed murder that had money as its driving motive. Ian Stewart denies the charges as the trial continues. Neil Connery, ITV News at St Albans Crown Court.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News, what a waste, why Britons are throwing away more and more food, and the James Bond star promoting Britain's newest official sport. Those stories and more after the break. Join me then. And welcome back. British households are throwing away £13 billion worth of perfectly good food every year. Supermarket multi-buy deals and an overall fall in food prices are being blamed for the increase in waste. Here's our consumer editor, Chris Choi.
Today's new figures show that all too often the food we buy is feeding our dustbins instead of our families, and this home is typical of millions which every tea time add to Britain's waste mountain.
So here we've got some roast chicken that was left over from Sunday, and to be honest, if I don't use that today, it's likely to go in the bin. So that'll be.
That's a lot of waste, a plateful.
Yeah, and some watercress that I bought for a recipe that's already out of date, so that's likely to possibly go to waste as well.
What do you think it is that's leading to this kind of waste?
Possibly buying too much if it's on offer at the supermarkets.
Today's new figures show that £13 billion worth of food is being needlessly wasted each year in UK homes. It amounts to 7.3 million tonnes thrown away. The most wasted product is bread, with 24 million slices binned every day. Meanwhile, the food industry has cut waste by 100,000 tonnes over 3 years.
OK, so these eggs have been thrown away, obviously.
This volunteer-run cafe uses food past its sell-by date or with damaged packs, all discarded by shops and supermarkets. They say there's much more we can all do to prevent waste.
The juice has gone out of date, but again, we'll trust our senses of smell and taste.
Campaigners now want supermarkets to display anti-waste advice alongside the foods we most often throw out. This depot gets unwanted food in bulk from the industry and channels it to community groups.
Food waste is everyone's responsibility, right from the top sort of manufacturers down to in our own homes. And we need to really reconnect with the value of food.
And with prices due to rise, unless we change, we'll be throwing away more money as well as food. Chris Choi, ITV News.
And for the top 5 tips on cutting down on food waste, take a look at our website, itv.com/news. Police are investigating after saline bags were tampered with at a hospital in Cumbria. Cumberland Infirmary has tightened security since the discovery was made last week. And Southern Rail passengers had their journeys disrupted again today as drivers began more strike action. Almost all services were cancelled because of the walkout over driver-only trains. This year's BAFTA Awards feature a battle between musical romance and hard-hitting reality. The Hollywood hit La La Land is up against the most nominated British film, and it's the gritty drama I, Daniel Blake. Nina Nana reports.
It is pure escapism and is now set to sweep up even more awards.
There's so much that I can't see.
La La Land is up for 11 BAFTAs. The voters clearly won over by this romantic musical, a tale of young lovers in pursuit of the Hollywood dream.
Jesus Christ! Who's first in this queue?
I am.
Do you mind if this young lass signs on first?
No, you carry on. This isn't your concern. I want you to get out as well.
And what a contrast. Competing with La La Land for the Best Film BAFTA is I, Daniel Blake, a gritty story about struggling to live below the poverty line in the northeast.
Everything on the receipts in your bags, then there's no problem.
You don't need to shout at me.
OK, if you'd like to come this way.
It comes 50 years after its director, Ken Loach, renowned for depicting the realities of working-class life, won his first BAFTA.
It's good for the people who told us their stories and the people who helped us make the film, because I mean, films can do many things. They can make you laugh, they can make you cry, they can tell you stories, excite you, terrify you, but also show you the world that's the real world, and that's what we tried to do.
What happened? What happened, Chiron? Why you didn't come home like you're supposed to?
British actress Naomi Harris's portrayal of a drug addict is also recognised this year. Moonlight, set in a run-down Miami neighbourhood, was made for 1/10 of the budget of La La Land. With a large number of BAFTA voters also overlapping with Oscar voters, it is looking good for the low-budget human drama when the Oscar nominations are announced later this month. But with voters going gaga over La La Land, can harsh reality beat pure escapism? Nina Nana, ITV News.
Football's world governing body FIFA has voted to expand the World Cup from 32 to 48 teams from 2026. The number of tournament matches will also rise from 64 to 80. Critics say the move is financially driven to increase participation and revenue from Asian countries. And finally, Britain has become the first country officially to recognise parkour as a sport, also called free running. It's a sort of urban acrobatics, climbing, leaping off buildings and walls. The critics point to the obvious dangers, but those who practice it say it can be both thrilling and safe. Rebecca Barry has been to see how it's done.
It's daring, breathtaking, terrifying at times. Parkour is running, it's jumping, it's climbing over buildings, obstacles, anything. And it's now officially a sport, as the UK becomes the first country in the world to recognise it. And that means it could be taught in schools. These children already have a parkour park in their playground.
I love parkour because you can literally do it everywhere and it's really fun.
Isn't it a bit dangerous?
It is dangerous, but if you learn from someone experienced, then there won't be as much pain.
Occasionally things do go wrong, and some fear this will only encourage young people to take risks. But Parkour founder Sebastian Foucan, who showed off his skills in James Bond, says it's as safe as any sport.
If you practice rugby wrongly, wrestling, surfing, climbing, if you don't do it in the right way, you can get hurt. You don't need any equipment. It's what we do when we're from babies to when we grow adults. So we shouldn't stop.
Now that this is an official sport, the governing body can apply for National Lottery funding to promote it and get it taught in schools.
So soon, PE lessons could look more like this. Rebecca Barry, ITV News.
Well, that's it for now. Tom's here at 10, but from me and all the team, have a great evening. Bye-bye.